Whispers of a world of culture. Romania. Where the forest meets ancient memory. A sleep story and cultural journey. Close your eyes for a moment, and imagine standing at the edge of a forest so old and so dense that the light inside it arrives in slanted columns, filtered through layer after layer of beech and oak and pine. The forest floor is soft beneath your feet, a deep accumulation of fallen leaves from 100 autumns, each layer pressed gently upon the last. The air is cool, even in summer, and it carries the smell of moss and earth and something sharper underneath, the resin of conifers, perhaps, or the faint sweetness of wild mushrooms. Somewhere above you, a bird calls once and is silent. The forest listens. This is Romania. Welcome, gently, to a country that carries within it some of the most varied and beautiful landscapes in Europe, a land of ancient forests and wide plains, of mountain ranges and river deltas, of medieval towns preserved with extraordinary completeness, of villages where traditions that have been practiced for centuries continue to be practiced with quiet faithfulness today. Romania sits at a crossroads, between Eastern and Western Europe, between the Latin world and the Slavic, between the mountains of the Carpathians and the great plain of the Danube, and this position at the intersection of worlds has given it a character of remarkable richness and depth. As we begin this long, slow journey together, there is no need to rush. Let the landscapes of Romania arrive in their own time. Imagine the light as it falls on the painted monasteries of Bucovina in the early morning, the frescoes on the exterior walls of these churches, painted with colors so rich and so carefully preserved that they seem still to breathe, the deep blue and the ochre and the green glowing against the grey of the stone. Imagine the sound of the Danube at its delta, the vast, slow sound of water moving through reeds, the call of pelicans overhead, the world reduced to water and sky and the thin green line of the far bank. Romania's geography is one of the most varied in Europe. The Carpathian Mountains form a great arc through the heart of the country, a horseshoe of ranges that divide the Transylvanian plateau from the plains and lowlands that surround it. These are old mountains, worn and forested, their peaks rounded and their valleys deep and green. The beech forests of the Carpathians are among the largest remaining old-growth forests in Europe, places where trees have been growing for hundreds of years undisturbed, where the understory is dark and quiet, where wolves and bears still move through the undergrowth in the early morning and late evening hours. Within the arc of the Carpathians lies Transylvania, a name that carries, for many people around the world, an almost mythological weight. The reality of Transylvania is at once more ordinary and more beautiful than the mythology suggests. It is a land of gently rolling hills and wide meadows, of fortified Saxon churches that rise unexpectedly from the center of small villages, of medieval towns whose centers are so well preserved that walking into them feels like stepping into another century. The light in Transylvania in autumn is particularly beautiful, a warm, amber light that falls on the red and gold of the turning leaves and on the faded colors of old buildings, creating a world that seems to glow from within. To the south of the Carpathians lies Wallachia, the great plain that stretches from the mountains to the Danube, flat and agricultural and wide, the sky enormous above it. The Wallachian plain has a different character from the mountain regions, more open, more exposed, more obviously connected to the great agricultural rhythms of planting and harvest that have governed life here since the first settlements. The villages of the plain have their own beauty, the whitewashed houses with their blue trim, the apple orchards, the wells with their long counterbalanced poles, but it is a quieter, more horizontal beauty than the drama of the mountains. To the east lies Moldavia, a region of hills and river valleys, of vineyards and orchards, of painted monasteries nestled in wooded valleys as if placed there with particular care. The monasteries of Bucovina, in the northern part of Moldavia, are among the most extraordinary architectural achievements in all of Eastern Europe. Their exterior frescoes, painted in the 15th and 16th centuries, depict scenes from the Bible and from the lives of the saints in a visual language of astonishing richness, the figures arranged in hierarchical bands of color against backgrounds of blue or ochre or deep green. And then there is the Danube Delta, the place where the great river, after its 2,000-kilometer journey across Europe, spreads itself into a complex of channels and lakes and reed beds before entering the Black Sea. The delta is one of the largest and best-preserved wetlands in Europe, a UNESCO World Heritage Site and a haven for wildlife of extraordinary diversity. To move through the delta by boat is to enter a world that seems to exist outside of ordinary time. The channels so narrow that the reeds brush the sides of the boat, the water dark and still, the herons standing in the shallows with their characteristic patience. Romania's climate reflects its geographical variety. The mountains have their own cool, moist climate, cold winters with heavy snow, springs that arrive slowly and hesitantly, summers that are brief and green and bright, autumns that are long and golden. The plains are warmer and drier, with hot summers and cold, sometimes harsh winters. The eastern coast along the Black Sea has a mild, Mediterranean-influenced climate that allows grapes and fruit to ripen in conditions quite different from the rest of the country. In the quiet rhythm of everyday life, Romanians move through a landscape that has been shaped by human hands for thousands of years. The fields ploughed and planted, the forests managed and harvested, the rivers channeled and bridged, and yet which retains, in many places, a quality of wildness and depth that speaks to the long prehistory of the land before those human hands arrived. There is in Romania, more than in many European countries, a living connection between the contemporary population and the land they inhabit. A connection expressed in the village gardens that are still tended by hand, in the seasonal foods that still follow the rhythms of the agricultural year, in the folk traditions that are still practiced in communities across the country. Romania's national identity is layered and complex in ways that reflect its position at the crossroads of worlds. The Romanian language is a Romance language, the easternmost of the major Romance languages, carrying within it the deep structure and much of the vocabulary of the Latin brought by Roman colonists in the 2nd century CE, preserved and transformed across 2 millennia of subsequent history. This Latin heritage is a source of deep pride in the national identity, a connection to the classical world that sets Romania apart from its Slavic and Hungarian neighbors and that has been celebrated and emphasized in the country's cultural self-understanding since the early modern period. As we gently move through time in this documentary, we will follow this layered story with care and quiet attention. We will walk through medieval towns and sit in painted churches. We will taste the food and hear the music. We will follow the customs and the ceremonies and the seasons, tracing the long, patient story of a people who have lived in one of Europe's most beautiful and most demanding landscapes and have made from it something rich and enduring. For now, simply rest here at the threshold. Imagine the first light of morning spreading across a Transylvanian valley, the mist still in the hollows, the church tower catching the early sun, a farmer already at work in the field below, the sound of a cart on a cobbled street somewhere in the distance. The day is beginning, slowly, gently, as days have begun here for a very long time. This is Romania, and we have only just begun. History in Romania does not always announce itself loudly. It accumulates in layers, in the carved stone of a Roman column preserved in a provincial museum, in the frescoes of a monastery wall, in the wooden gate of a Maramure's village, in the family memory of a grandmother who remembers things her grandmother told her. To walk through Romania is to move through time in a way that is unusually palpable, the past not as a series of dates and events but as a physical presence, still visible in the landscape and the built environment, still audible in the language and the customs. Let us begin at the beginning, or as close to it as our knowledge reaches. The territory of modern Romania was inhabited long before the name Romania existed. The Dacians, the ancient people of the Carpathian and Danubian regions, built a sophisticated civilization in the centuries before the Common Era. Their fortresses, their distinctive coiled spring bracelets of gold and silver, their skill in metallurgy and agriculture, speak to a culture of real complexity. The Dacian king Decebalus, who led his people in 2 fierce wars against the armies of the Roman Emperor Trajan, is one of the great figures of Romanian historical memory, celebrated for the courage and resourcefulness with which he defended his homeland against one of the most powerful military forces the ancient world had ever seen. The Romans conquered Dacia between 101 and 106 CE, and the province they established, Dacia Felix, Fortunate Dacia, remained part of the Roman Empire for less than 2 centuries. And yet in those 2 centuries, something fundamental was planted. The Latin language, Roman administrative structures, Roman ways of building and trading and organizing. These took root in the Dacian soil, and the fusion of Dacian and Roman that resulted would, across the long transformations of subsequent centuries, eventually become the Romanian people and the Romanian language. Across centuries, the territory of Romania was traversed and settled and claimed by successive waves of peoples: Goths and Huns, Avars and Bulgars, Slavs and Hungarians, Pechenegs and Cumans, each leaving traces in the genetic and cultural memory of the region. The medieval period saw the emergence of the 3 great Romanian principalities: Wallachia, Moldavia, and Transylvania, each with its own rulers, its own traditions, and its own complex relationships with the great powers that surrounded them: the Ottoman Empire, the Kingdom of Hungary, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. The voivodes of medieval Romania are figures whose names still resonate deeply in the national consciousness. Mircea the Elder of Wallachia, who managed the difficult task of maintaining his principality's existence between the competing pressures of Hungary and the Ottoman Empire with remarkable diplomatic skill. Stephen the Great of Moldavia, Stefan cel Mare, who ruled for nearly half a century and built 44 churches and monasteries across his principality, many of which still stand, as an act of gratitude for victories in battle and as a sustained offering of beauty to his people and to God. And Vlad III of Wallachia, known in Romanian memory as Vlad the Impaler, a figure whose historical reality is considerably more complex and more interesting than his transformation into a Gothic monster by later Western imagination. Through quiet resilience, the Romanian people navigated the centuries of Ottoman overlordship, Habsburg domination, and the competing pressures of empires without losing the thread of their own cultural identity. The language persisted. The Orthodox faith persisted. The customs and the music and the stories persisted, carried in the private spaces of the family and the village, in the monastery and the church, across generations that maintained their sense of who they were even when the political structures around them belonged to others. The 19th century brought a great surge of national consciousness and national assertion, a movement of cultural and political unification that drew inspiration from the Romantic nationalism sweeping across Europe and that articulated, with new clarity and new urgency, the idea of a single Romanian nation united by a common language and a common history. The union of Wallachia and Moldavia in 1859, under the rule of Alexandru Ioan Țuțar, was a foundational moment, the creation of the Romanian state that would, in 1918, be joined by Transylvania to form Greater Romania. The 20th century brought Romania through some of the most turbulent and painful experiences of European history. 2 world wars, a communist dictatorship that lasted more than 4 decades, an economy shaped by ideology rather than by practical wisdom, a culture subject to pressures of conformity and control, and yet, through all of this, something persisted. The folk traditions continued to be practiced in the villages. The monasteries continued to be tended. The language continued to be spoken with care and beauty. The literature continued to be written, sometimes in secret, sometimes in exile, but continued. In moments of change, Romania emerged from the communist period in 1989 through a revolution that was, in many of its aspects, genuinely dramatic. But the deeper story of the transition is one of gradual, sometimes painful, sometimes hopeful reconstruction. Of institutions, of civil society, of the relationship between citizens and their state. Romania joined the European Union in 2007, a moment that was experienced by many Romanians as a confirmation of belonging, a return to the wider European community from which decades of isolation had separated them. Over generations, the Romanian people have carried their history with a particular kind of pride, not always comfortable with it, not always in agreement about how to interpret it, but aware of its depth and its complexity. The ruins of the Dacian fortresses in the Orthodox Mountains, the Roman remains at Ulpia Traiana Sumizăgetusa, the painted churches of Bucovina, the wooden churches of Maramureș, the fortified Saxon churches of Transylvania, these are not merely tourist attractions. They are the material evidence of a civilization that has been building and creating and enduring in this landscape for a very long time. The landscape of Romanian history is also a landscape of remarkable cultural fusion, the meeting point of Latin and Slavic influences, of Orthodox and Catholic and Protestant traditions, of Romanian and Hungarian and Saxon and Romanian Jewish communities, each contributing their own thread to the woven fabric of the culture. This diversity has sometimes been a source of tension, as it has been in many places, but it has also been a source of extraordinary richness, of the musical creativity, the culinary variety, the architectural eclecticism that give Romanian culture its distinctive character. As we gently move forward in our journey, we carry this history with us, not as a weight, but as a kind of quiet foundation beneath our feet. Romania's story is long and layered, and it continues to be written, day by day, in the lives of its people and in the ongoing transformation of its landscape. In the sections that follow, we will explore the culture that has grown from this history, the language, the beliefs, the food, the art, and we will try to understand, softly and without hurry, what it means to be Romanian in this deep and continuing sense. If you listen closely to Romanian being spoken at an ordinary pace, in a market, or a cafe, or between friends on a street corner, you begin to notice something quite particular about its sound. It is a language of flowing vowels and clear consonants, of rhythms that are both musical and conversational, of a certain openness in the way sounds are formed in the mouth. It is, to ears accustomed to the other Romance languages, both familiar and surprising. Familiar because the deep structure is Latin, surprising because it has been shaped by 2,000 years of different influences than its Western siblings. Romanian is the easternmost of the major Romance languages, a language that carries within it the Latin of Roman Dacia, transformed across the centuries by contact with Slavic languages, with Hungarian, with Greek, with Turkish, and with a dozen other languages of the peoples who have moved through and settled in the Carpathian and Danubian region. The result is a language with a Latin skeleton and a vocabulary that draws from many wells, a language that a speaker of Italian or Spanish or French will recognize in glimpses, in the shape of a word here or the structure of a sentence there, but will not understand without study. The vocabulary of Romanian tells the story of its history in compressed form. The core vocabulary is unmistakably Latin, words like ape, water, foc, fire, casa, house, dragost, love. But the Slavic influences are significant, particularly in words for daily activities and natural phenomena. Hungarian has contributed a cluster of words, particularly in Transylvania. Turkish has left traces from the centuries of Ottoman contact, particularly in words for food and commercial life. Greek, the language of the Phanariot period and of the Orthodox Church, has given the language a layer of theological and intellectual vocabulary. The grammar of Romanian preserves features that Latin had but that the other Romance languages lost. Romanian retains a case system, a set of grammatical forms that change depending on the noun's role in the sentence, a feature that connects it structurally to Latin in a way that French or Spanish or Italian no longer do. Romanian also has a definite article that is attached to the end of the noun rather than placed before it. Man, becomes omiul, the man, a characteristic feature that gives the language a distinctive rhythm. When you hear Romanian spoken with care and attention, there is a quality of music in it that reflects its position as the bridge between the Latin world and the Slavic. The vowels are rich and full. The sound a reduced central vowel that exists in Romanian and is represented by its own letter, gives the language a particular tonal quality, a softness in the unstressed syllables that is quite characteristic. The rolled r, which Romanian shares with Spanish and Italian, adds a note of warmth and texture. The overall sound of Romanian speech, to an attentive ear, is at once energetic and melodic, a language that seems to enjoy the physical process of being spoken. Romanian is spoken not only in Romania but also in the Republic of Moldova, in parts of Serbia, Ukraine, and Bulgaria, and in diaspora communities across Europe, North America, and beyond. The relationship between Romanian and Moldovan, the official language of Moldova, which is linguistically identical to Romanian but which has carried, for political and historical reasons, a separate official designation, is a nuanced topic in the region's cultural life. What is not in question is the deep linguistic unity of the communities on both sides of the Prut River, a unity expressed in shared literature, shared music, and shared forms of everyday speech. In the quiet of everyday communication, Romanian carries a strong culture of expressiveness. Romanians tend to be verbally gifted, quick with a story, comfortable with metaphor and irony, appreciative of wit and wordplay. The tradition of oral storytelling, of the basm, the Romanian fairy tale, with its particular cast of characters and its distinctive narrative rhythms, has left its mark on the culture of speech, creating an appreciation for narrative elaboration and expressive detail that shows up in ordinary conversation as well as in formal literature. The formal register of Romanian, the language of literature, of official communication, of educated speech, is somewhat different from the informal registers of everyday conversation. The formal language has been deliberately shaped, particularly in the 19th century, by intellectuals who sought to emphasize the Latin heritage and to bring Romanian closer to French and Italian, adding loanwords from these languages, adjusting spellings to make the Latin etymology more visible. The result is a standard language that carries its history very visibly, that wears its Latin roots proudly. There are regional accents and dialects across Romania that are immediately recognizable to native speakers: the Moldavian accent with its softer consonants and particular melody, the Transylvanian speech with its own rhythms and Hungarian-influenced vocabulary, the Oltenian dialect of the southwest with its particular color and energy. These regional varieties are not simply deviations from a standard norm. They are living expressions of the different histories and cultural influences that have shaped different parts of the country, and they carry with them a warmth of local identity. The literature of Romania, which we will explore more fully in the section on art and creativity, is a literature of remarkable depth and quality that is not as widely known in the West as it deserves to be. The great Romanian poets, Mihai Eminescu, whose work in the 19th century defined a standard of lyrical beauty that remains central to the culture, Lucian Blaga, whose philosophical poetry engages with myth and mystery, Ana Blandiana, whose work has moved between lyrical beauty and civic courage across decades, have enriched not only Romanian culture but European literature as a whole. Body language and communication style in Romania tend to be warm and relatively direct. Physical contact in greeting, the cheek kiss between friends, the handshake between acquaintances, is common and expected. Eye contact in conversation is maintained with comfort and confidence. Romanians generally enjoy conversation and are comfortable with the kind of passionate discussion of ideas, of politics, of life's large questions, that would feel intrusive or excessive in more reserved cultural contexts. There is a quality of engagement, of genuine interest in the other person and in the exchange of views, that is characteristic of Romanian social interaction. In the soft fabric of tradition, language in Romania carries with it the memory of long struggle for survival and recognition, the centuries during which the Romance language of the Romanian people persisted against the pressure of larger and more politically powerful neighbors, the long effort of scholars and writers to articulate and celebrate the culture's Latin heritage, the stubborn persistence of the vernacular through periods of official marginalization. Romanian is not taken for granted. It is cherished as something that has been worth preserving. As we move gently forward, we carry with us the sound of this language, the flowing vowels and the rich consonants, the music of its everyday speech and the beauty of its literary expression. Language, in Romania, is not simply communication. It is identity, it is history, it is a form of belonging that connects the speaker to a very long chain of people who have spoken these words, in this landscape, across the centuries. At the heart of daily life in Romania, there is a particular quality that becomes apparent over time, a combination of warmth and resilience, of pragmatic adaptability and deep-rooted attachment to family and place. It is a quality that has been shaped by centuries of history both difficult and beautiful, by a landscape that demands hard work and rewards it with extraordinary bounty, by a cultural tradition that places the family and the community at the center of individual life. To understand Romanian values is, in many ways, to understand the story of how a people has survived and flourished in a demanding corner of the world. In many homes across Romania, the family is the fundamental unit of social life, not only the nuclear family but the extended family. Grandparents, aunts and uncles, cousins, the network of connections that spreads outward from the immediate household through generations and through geography. The care of elderly family members is considered a natural responsibility. To place an aging parent in an institutional setting would, in most Romanian families, be understood as a failure of love rather than a practical choice. Grandparents are important figures in child rearing, often providing daily care while parents work, and their role in transmitting the traditions and values of the family is considered both natural and necessary. Often, you will find that Romanian family life centers on shared meals, the Sunday lunch that gathers the extended family around a table, the holiday feasts that are prepared over days with enormous care and labor, the summer visits to grandparents in the village that remain central memories of childhood for many Romanians who have grown up in cities. Food is not merely sustenance in this context. It is a language of care, a way of expressing love and hospitality, a medium through which family bonds are maintained and renewed. The concept of omeni, a Romanian word that might be translated as human decency, or warm humanity, or the quality of being a full and generous human being, is central to the value system of Romanian culture. To be a person of omeni, is to be hospitable, generous, honest, and decent in one's dealings with others. The obligation to offer food and drink to a guest, to help a neighbor in difficulty, to contribute to the community in times of need. These are not optional social graces but moral requirements, expressions of the fundamental human solidarity that Romanian culture values very highly. Work ethic in Romania reflects both the demands of its agricultural heritage and the values of a culture that prizes practical competence. The ability to do things well with your hands, to grow a garden, to build or repair a house, to prepare food from scratch, to make or mend clothing, is respected and admired. In the villages, where these skills are still practiced in their most complete forms, their mastery is a source of genuine pride. Even in the cities, among generations that have moved away from agricultural life, these skills are often maintained as a connection to the family past and as a form of self-sufficiency that carries its own satisfaction. At the same time, education is highly valued, perhaps more deeply valued than in some Western European cultures, where practical success has sometimes come to seem more important than scholarly achievement. In Romania, the educated person, the person who knows, who reads, who thinks carefully, is held in high esteem. The tradition of the intellectual as a figure of moral authority, as a spokesperson for the community's deeper values and aspirations, is strong in Romanian culture. Writers, poets, philosophers, and scholars have played important public roles in Romanian life across the centuries, and this tradition of intellectual engagement with public life continues to be felt. Views on success in Romania are somewhat more oriented toward family and community than toward purely individual achievement. A successful person is typically described in terms of family, of children raised well, of relationships maintained with integrity, of contribution to the community. Individual wealth and status are not without value, of course, but they are often evaluated in the context of how they are used. Whether the successful person is generous, whether they help their family and their community, whether their success has been achieved with integrity. Resilience is another quality that runs deep in the Romanian character, a resilience that has been forged in the historical experience of a people who have had, over the centuries, to adapt to changing circumstances, to navigate between competing powers, to maintain their cultural identity through periods of great external pressure. There is in Romanian culture a certain pragmatic flexibility, a willingness to bend without breaking, to find ways of maintaining what matters most even when the external conditions are difficult. This resilience is not resignation. It is a form of intelligence, developed over long experience. The concept of dor, a Romanian word that has no precise equivalent in English, often translated as longing or nostalgia but carrying a richer and more complex emotional charge, is one of the most distinctive contributions of Romanian culture to the emotional vocabulary of humanity. Dor is a longing for something or someone absent, for a homeland left behind, for a childhood landscape, for a person loved and missed, but it is not a simply painful emotion. It carries within it a kind of sweetness, a recognition that the thing longed for is precious, a sense of the beauty of what is absent. Dor is the emotion of the Romanian folk song, of the doina, the great lyrical form that expresses, in music and words, the full depth of human longing. In the soft fabric of tradition, Romanian social life is characterized by a warmth and generosity that visitors consistently notice and remember. The hospitality of a Romanian home, the immediate offer of food and drink, the genuine interest in the guest's well-being and story, the sense that the visitor has been truly welcomed rather than merely received, is not a performance but an expression of real values, of the deep conviction that the guest is to be honored and that the host's home is enriched by their presence. There is also in Romanian culture a certain relationship to time that is more relaxed than the strictly scheduled approach of some Northern European cultures. Social occasions expand to fill the time available, meals extend into conversation, visits that were meant to be brief become long and leisurely. This is not inefficiency, it is a different set of priorities, one that places the quality of human connection above the efficiency of task completion. A conversation that goes long because it is real and interesting and warm is not, in this view, a waste of time. It is, precisely, the point. Over generations, these values, family loyalty, warm hospitality, respect for education and practical competence, resilience in the face of difficulty, the capacity for deep feeling, have shaped a culture of remarkable warmth and depth. They are values that have been tested by some of the most demanding historical circumstances of the 20th century and have proven, again and again, their capacity to sustain a community through very difficult times. As we move gently forward in our journey, we carry these values with us as a kind of lens. Everything we encounter in Romanian culture, the food, the music, the customs, the art, is, in its different way, an expression of the same underlying orientation. The conviction that human life is most fully lived in warm relationship with others, in the care of the land and the family, in the honest and beautiful making of things that are worth making. Imagine stepping into a Romanian Orthodox church on a Sunday morning in winter. The light inside is different from the light outside, warmer, more golden, filtered through colored glass and reflected from the gilded surfaces of the iconostasis, the great carved and painted screen that separates the nave from the sanctuary. The smell of incense is present, not overwhelming, but persistent, a smell that has accumulated in the stones over centuries of use, that rises again whenever the censer is swung and the smoke curls upward toward the painted vaults. The voices of the choir begin, a cappella, complex, the harmonies of Byzantine tradition settling into the ancient words like water into familiar channels. Romanian Orthodoxy is the spiritual home of the great majority of Romanians, a form of Christianity that arrived in the Carpathian and Danubian regions in the early centuries of the Common Era and that has shaped the culture, the art, the calendar, and the deepest values of the Romanian people across nearly 2 millennia. It is a form of Christianity that is, in important ways, different from both the Roman Catholicism of Western Europe and the various Protestant traditions. A Christianity that places great emphasis on the beauty of the liturgy, on the sacred quality of images and icons, on the calendar of fasting and feasting that gives the religious year its rhythm, on the community of the living and the dead united in prayer. The Orthodox calendar gives Romanian life a ceremonial structure that persists even among those who are not regularly practicing believers. The great feasts of the Church, Christmas, Easter, the Feast of St. George, the Feast of Saints Constantine and Helen, the Feast of the Assumption, are cultural as much as religious events, moments when family gathers, when specific foods are prepared, when specific customs are observed, when the boundary between the sacred and the everyday becomes momentarily thin. Easter, Paste, is the most important of all these occasions. The Romanian Orthodox Easter is celebrated with a ceremony that is both ancient and immediately alive, the midnight service in which the light of the resurrection is passed from candle to candle, spreading through the darkened church and then out into the churchyard, where the congregation gathers holding their lit candles against the April night. The priest's announcement, Christos inviat, Christ is risen, is answered by the congregation, Adevărata inviat, truly he is risen, and the words pass from person to person in the darkness like the flame itself, warm and certain. The church buildings of Romania are among the most beautiful in the Orthodox world. The painted monasteries of Bucovina, Voronit, Susavita, Moldavita, Huma, are among the masterpieces of European religious art. Their exterior walls are covered from ground to eaves with frescoes that depict the great narratives of the Christian faith in a visual language of extraordinary sophistication. The figures arranged in hierarchical rows, the backgrounds of deep blue or warm ochre or forest green, the whole composition organized according to a theological and aesthetic logic that rewards contemplative attention for as long as you are willing to give it. The blue of Voronezh, a particular shade of ultramarine blue that was developed in the 15th century and that has never been perfectly replicated, is perhaps the most famous of these colors, a blue so deep and luminous it seems to carry within it all the sky of all the summers that have passed since it was painted. Alongside the Orthodox tradition, Romania has been home to other religious communities whose presence has enriched its cultural life. The Roman Catholic and Greek Catholic communities of Transylvania reflect the region's history of Habsburg rule and the complex religious politics of the early modern period. The Protestant traditions, Lutheran, Calvinist, Unitarian, were established among the Saxon and Hungarian communities of Transylvania in the 16th century, and the Unitarian Church of Transylvania is one of the oldest continuously existing Unitarian communities in the world. Jewish communities, present in Romania for many centuries and particularly prominent in Moldavia and Bukovina in the 19th and early 20th centuries, contributed significantly to Romanian cultural and intellectual life. The folk spiritual tradition in Romania, the layer of belief and practice that exists beneath and alongside the official religion, is as rich and complex as in any country in Europe. The customs surrounding birth, marriage, and death, the beliefs about the protective or threatening powers of various natural forces and beings, the folk medicine practices that draw on the herbal knowledge accumulated over centuries, the customs of the agricultural calendar that mark the turning of the seasons with ritual and festivity. These practices reflect a deep and ancient engagement with the rhythms of the natural world and with the forces that human beings have sensed behind those rhythms. The martisa, the small red and white talisman that is exchanged on the first day of March, is one of the most beloved of Romanian folk customs, and it carries within it a layer of meaning that reaches far below the surface. The red and white threads, twisted together into a cord, represent winter and summer, cold and warmth, the turning of the year from the dying season to the living season. To give a martisa is to make a small offering to the renewal of life, to acknowledge that winter is ending and something new and tender is beginning. It is a custom with pre-Christian roots, adapted and transformed across the centuries, and it remains deeply alive in contemporary Romania. If we listen closely to the spiritual life of Romania, we hear in it a conversation between the formal and the folk, between the theology of the church and the immemorial customs of the agricultural year, between the painted vault of the monastery church and the small ritual performed in a farmyard at the new moon, between the incense and the candle and the fire lit on the hillside at midsummer. These are not, in the Romanian understanding, contradictions. They are different registers of the same fundamental attentiveness, the same awareness that the world is charged with meaning, that the forces that govern the seasons and the harvests and the lives of human beings are worth acknowledging and honoring. The monasteries of Romania have always been more than places of prayer. They have been centers of culture, of learning, of the preservation of manuscripts and the practice of the arts. The great monasteries of the north, Putna, Voronezh, Susavita, were built by rulers who understood that the spiritual life and the cultural life of the community were inseparable, that the beauty of the monastery expressed and sustained the values that gave the community its identity. Many of these monasteries are still functioning communities today, inhabited by monks or nuns, continuing the liturgical life that has been practiced in these places for 5 or 6 centuries. In the soft fabric of tradition, Orthodox Christianity in Romania is not primarily a doctrinal matter. It is a practice, a way of moving through the year and through life, a set of forms and rhythms that give shape and meaning to time. The fasts and the feasts, the services and the silences, the icons and the candles. These are not obligations imposed from without, but expressions of a deep conviction that human life is most fully lived when it maintains a conscious relationship with the sacred dimension of existence. As we move gently forward, we carry with us the light of those candles, the warm, unsteady light that illuminates the painted faces of the saints on the walls of ancient churches, that passes from hand to hand at the Easter midnight service, that burns before the icons in the small domestic shrine that many Romanian homes maintain as a matter of course. This light is not only a symbol, it is a practice, a daily, embodied gesture of attention and devotion that connects the individual life to the long continuity of the community and the faith. In the soft fabric of tradition, the Romanian year turns through a cycle of celebrations, ceremonies, and customs that connect the community to the rhythms of the natural world and to the memory of its ancestors. These traditions are not museum pieces, they are living practices, maintained and renewed across generations, varying from region to region in their specific forms while sharing a common underlying orientation toward the world. To follow the Romanian calendar through its seasonal ceremonies is to enter a way of understanding time that is rich, embodied, and deeply connected to the life of the land. The winter season, the darkest time of the year, is perhaps the richest in Romanian folk tradition. The period between the feast of St. Nicholas on the 6th of December and the New Year is filled with customs that combine Christian celebration with much older practices of the turning of the year, the driving out of darkness, the invocation of fertility and abundance for the coming season. The Colind, the traditional carols of the Romanian winter, are among the most beautiful expressions of this tradition. Songs that move from house to house in the deep winter nights, sung by groups of carolers whose voices carry through the cold air the ancient words of blessing and invitation. Christmas in Romania is celebrated on the 25th of December, but the celebration stretches through a full 12 days to the New Year and beyond. In the villages, the season is marked by a series of customs that are specific and vivid. The slaughter of the pig on the feast of St. Ignatius, a community event that involves the whole extended family and that produces the ingredients for the Christmas feast. The decoration of the house with fir branches, the preparation of specific foods, the games and songs and dances of the young people in the days between Christmas and the New Year. The New Year's customs in Romania are among the most visually distinctive in Europe. In many regions, groups of young men wearing extraordinary costumes of fur and masks and elaborate headdresses process through the village in what are called the calasari or bear dancer rituals, ancient ceremonial performances whose exact original meaning has been lost but whose energy and visual impact are unmistakable. These performances have the character of ritual theatre. They are at once entertainment and ceremony, community gathering and spiritual practice, a way of marking the turning of the year with something that is both festive and profound. Spring brings its own rituals. The first day of March, Martisa, we have already noted. But the entire spring season, from the first thaw through Easter and the great feast of St. George on the 23rd of April, is marked by customs that celebrate the renewal of life and invoke blessing for the agricultural year ahead. St. George's Day, Sfântul Gheorghe, has a particular importance in Romanian folk tradition, associated with the first grazing of the animals, with the protection of the herds, with the beginning of the outdoor work of the farming year. In some regions, the cattle are decorated with flowers and driven to pasture with ceremony and blessing on this day. Romanian weddings are elaborate, multi-day ceremonies that have their own complex ritual structure, a structure that combines Orthodox Christian ceremony with a wealth of folk custom. The traditional Romanian wedding involves a series of events spread over 2 or 3 days, beginning with the gathering of guests at the respective family homes, proceeding through the religious ceremony, and continuing with a feast and celebration that may last through the night and into the following day. The music is central. The taraf, the traditional Romanian ensemble, plays continuously through the celebration, and the dancing is both a social activity and a form of ceremonial expression. The traditional Romanian dance forms, the hora, the saba, the brau, and many regional varieties, are dances of the community, performed in circles or lines in which everyone participates. The hora, the round dance in which participants hold hands and move together in a circle, is perhaps the most emblematic of all, a form that embodies, in its physical structure, the idea of the community as a circle of connected individuals, moving together, holding one another up. The hour of the hora at a Romanian wedding or village celebration is a moment of genuine community, a moment when the boundaries between generations and between individual concerns dissolve in the shared movement of the dance. The tradition of the doina, the great lyrical folk song form of Romanian music, is another thread in the fabric of tradition that deserves gentle attention. The doina is a form of free-form vocal improvisation, a song without fixed meter, that expresses the deepest emotions of the individual in relation to the world: love and longing, joy and grief, the beauty of the landscape, the ache of separation, the sweetness of reunion. The doina is considered by many musicologists to be one of the most sophisticated forms of folk music in Europe, a form of such expressive freedom and such musical complexity that its full appreciation requires both the ear and the heart. Funeral customs in Romania reflect the deep Orthodox Christian understanding of death as a transition rather than an ending, a passage from this life to the next, to be marked with prayer, with tears, with the gathering of community, and with the specific rituals that ease the soul's journey. The period of mourning after a death includes a series of memorial services held at specific intervals, at 3 days, 9 days, 40 days, and then at various anniversaries, at which the community gathers to pray together and to share a meal in memory of the deceased. The concept of the pomana, the memorial meal at which food is distributed in the name of the deceased, is one of the most characteristic of Romanian funeral customs. The sharing of food in memory of the dead is understood as an act of both charity and communication, an offering on behalf of the soul of the departed, a way of maintaining the bond between the living and the dead that Romanian spiritual culture affirms very strongly. At these meals, specific foods are prepared: caliva, a sweet wheat pudding decorated with the symbols of resurrection, and distributed to all who attend. The craft traditions of Romania are an important part of the traditional culture. The weaving, the embroidery, the pottery, the woodworking that have been practiced in the villages for centuries. Each region of Romania has its own distinctive patterns and color vocabularies, its own forms and techniques, and the variety across the country is remarkable. The embroidery of Maramureș, with its bold geometric patterns and rich colors, is different from the embroidery of Bucovina or Muntenia. The pottery of Horezu is different from the pottery of Marginia or Aboga. These regional distinctions are not merely decorative, they are expressions of local identity, of the particular history and environment of each place. Over generations, these traditions have proven their capacity to hold time together, to create moments of shared meaning in the flow of the year, to connect the living to the dead and the present to the past. They are not simply customs, they are the practices by which a community sustains its sense of who it is, where it comes from, and what it values. As we move gently forward in our journey, we carry with us the images of these ceremonies: the candlelit Easter procession in the churchyard, the cowlus moving through the winter village, the hora turning in the summer evening, the children in traditional costume at the Martisa celebration. These images are from the living present of a people who know the value of what they carry. Imagine stepping into a Romanian kitchen on a Sunday morning. The smell that greets you is complex and deeply comforting. The long, slow smell of something cooking that has been on the fire since early morning, a soup or a stew that has had hours to deepen and settle, its aromas layering and combining in the warm air. There is the smell of fresh bread, perhaps, from the oven. There is the smell of herbs, dill, tarragon, lovage, that are used with a generosity that speaks to a culinary culture in which fresh herbs are considered not a garnish but a foundation. And somewhere beneath all of this, the warm, specific smell of the kitchen itself, a smell that combines with smoke and beeswax and the accumulated history of many meals prepared with care. Romanian cuisine is a cuisine of the seasons, of the land, and of the long patience of cooking. It is a cuisine that draws from the extraordinary agricultural richness of the Romanian landscape, from the vegetable gardens that are still tended by hand in most Romanian families, from the orchards of apple and plum and cherry and apricot, from the forests that yield mushrooms and berries and game, from the rivers and lakes that offer fish of many kinds. It is also a cuisine that has been shaped by the meeting of many cultures in the Romanian space, the Ottoman influence visible in the use of certain spices and preparation methods, the Hungarian influence in the hearty meat dishes of Transylvania, the Jewish influence in certain preserved foods, the Greek influence in the preparation of vegetables and fish. The foundation of Romanian cooking is the soup, ciorba, and it is a foundation of extraordinary variety and depth. Romanian soups are not thin broths but substantial, complex preparations, often soured with bors, a fermented wheat bran liquid, or with lemon or with unripe grapes or with the juice of pickled vegetables. The sourness is the defining note, the quality that makes a ciorba unmistakably Romanian, that lifts it from simple sustenance into something with a particular, pleasurable sharpness. Ciorba de Berta, tripe soup, with its rich, creamy, vinegar-brightened broth, is considered by many Romanians to be the ultimate comfort food, the remedy for winter cold and for the aftermath of celebration. The marmaliga, polenta, is perhaps the most fundamental and characteristic of all Romanian foods. Made from ground maize cooked in salted water until it reaches the consistency of thick porridge, marmaliga can be served soft, as an accompaniment to stews and grilled meats, or allowed to firm up and then sliced and fried or baked until its exterior is golden and slightly crisp. It is the bread of the Romanian peasant tradition, the staple that sustained generations through the long winter months, and it carries with it a weight of association and memory that elevates it, in the Romanian imagination, far beyond its humble ingredients. Sarmale, stuffed cabbage rolls, are perhaps the dish most closely associated with Romanian festive cooking. At Christmas and Easter, at weddings and celebrations of all kinds, the sarmale appear, rolls of minced pork and rice, seasoned with onion and herbs, wrapped in pickled or fresh cabbage leaves, and cooked slowly in tomato sauce, sometimes for many hours, sometimes overnight, until the flavors have merged into something deeply satisfying. The making of sarmale is traditionally a community activity, the extended family gathered around a table, rolling and tucking, the work lightened by conversation and by the knowledge of the feast to come. Romanian grilling, the preparation of maichi, also called mitate, small ground meat rolls, seasoned with garlic and caraway and other spices, over charcoal, is a beloved and distinctly Romanian tradition, particularly associated with outdoor gatherings and summer celebrations. The smell of maichi grilling over charcoal is one of the characteristic smells of Romanian summer, a smell that carries, for Romanians who encounter it abroad, an immediate pang of the door we spoke of earlier, the sweet longing for home. The vegetable dishes of Romanian cuisine deserve particular attention, not as side dishes or accompaniments, but as serious preparations in their own right. The salad of roasted peppers and tomatoes, dressed with garlic and oil, the zakuska, a slow-cooked vegetable spread of roasted peppers and aubergines, put up in jars at the end of the summer for the winter months ahead, the bean soup seasoned with smoked sausage, the mushroom dishes of the autumn table. These are preparations that reflect both the richness of the Romanian agricultural landscape and the depth of a culinary tradition that has had centuries to develop its understanding of how flavor works. The sweets of Romanian cuisine draw from both folk and courtly traditions. Cusine, the sweet, rich bread of the Christmas and Easter table, filled with walnuts and cocoa or with Turkish delight or with the cream cheese called branza dulce, is perhaps the most beloved of all Romanian sweet preparations. The making of cusine is a labor of love. The dough must be kneaded for a long time, must rise in a warm place, must be handled with care and patience, and the result, warm from the oven, releasing its sweet, yeasty, nutty fragrance into the kitchen, is one of the sensory experiences most deeply associated with Romanian festive life. Wine has been made in Romania for thousands of years. The country has some of the oldest winemaking traditions in Europe, with archaeological evidence of viticulture dating back 4,000 years. The wines of Moldova and Muntenia, of Dobroja and the Danube terraces, range from crisp, aromatic whites to full-bodied reds, and the wine culture of Romania, with its particular grape varieties, its distinctive terroirs, its long heritage of winemaking knowledge, is one of the country's less-known but genuinely significant cultural contributions. Romanian palinka, the fruit brandy distilled from plums or other fruits in the traditional manner, is the spirit most closely associated with Romanian hospitality and celebration. Offered to a guest on arrival, raised in a toast at celebrations, used medicinally, made at home in a tradition that goes back many generations. Palinka is both a drink and a cultural symbol, a liquid expression of the agricultural abundance of the Romanian landscape and of the tradition of home production that has been central to Romanian rural life. Table manners in Romania reflect the warmth and the seriousness with which food is treated in the culture. Meals are social occasions, time to sit together, to eat slowly, to talk. The host's responsibility is to ensure that the guest is well fed, and this responsibility is taken seriously. The guest who does not eat enough may cause the host genuine concern. The toast, norok, good luck, or sanitate, health, is an important ritual that marks the beginning of the meal and the moment of drinking, a small ceremony of communal recognition. In the warmth of the Romanian kitchen, with the soup on the stove and the bread cooling on the table and the family gathering around the Sunday meal, food becomes what it has always been at its best. A medium of love, a form of care made visible, a daily enactment of the conviction that nourishing other people is one of the most important and most beautiful things that a human being can do. This is the deepest truth of Romanian cuisine, and it is a truth that extends far beyond the recipes themselves. Every culture builds, over time, an invisible architecture, a set of shared understandings, unspoken rules, and conventional behaviors that allow people to move through the world together. In Romania, this invisible architecture is shaped by the values we have already explored: the warmth of family loyalty, the obligation of hospitality, the deep respect for elders and for education, and it expresses these values in the specific forms and protocols of everyday social interaction. To observe Romanian social life with attention is to read, in the gestures and the conventions of daily life, a coherent social philosophy. The greeting in Romania is warm and physical. Between people who know each other, the cheek kiss, one or two kisses, depending on the region and the relationship, is the standard greeting, accompanied by direct eye contact and a genuine expression of pleasure at the meeting. The handshake is used in more formal contexts and between people who do not know each other well. The immediate offering of a seat, of food, of drink, to any visitor, whether expected or unexpected, is automatic and genuine, the hospitality reflex that Romanian culture cultivates from childhood. Respect for elders is one of the most consistently observed social norms across Romania. Older people are addressed with formal forms of address, using the formal you, Dumnia vostra rather than tu, and titles rather than first names in contexts of relative unfamiliarity. On public transport, it is expected that younger people will offer their seats to older passengers. In family gatherings, the elders are served first, their opinions are sought, their stories are listened to with genuine attention. This respect is not merely formal, it reflects a real conviction that the accumulated experience of age is valuable and worth honoring. Romanian social life is characterized by a directness about personal matters that can surprise visitors from cultures with stronger norms of privacy. Questions about family status, about children, about professional situation and plans for the future are considered normal conversational topics in Romania, expressions of genuine interest and care rather than intrusions into private matters. The personal sphere is not, in Romanian social culture, as strictly separated from the social sphere as it is in many Northern European contexts. People are expected to know about each other's lives and to care about them. The concept of face, and its maintenance, operates in Romanian social life in ways that are familiar to anyone who has studied social dynamics. To behave in a way that reflects badly on one's family is a serious matter. To be known as a person of integrity and generosity is a source of real social capital. The community's opinion matters, not as an external constraint but as an expression of the social reality in which everyone participates. This collective dimension of reputation creates a social accountability that functions without the need for explicit enforcement. The relationship to time in Romania is somewhat complex, a subject that Romanians themselves discuss with affectionate self-awareness. In social contexts, a flexibility about time is common. Parties begin later than announced, visits extend beyond their planned duration. The general approach to scheduling is one of broad intention rather than precise commitment. This is not disorganization but a different set of priorities. The quality of the human interaction is more important than its precise temporal boundaries. In professional contexts, the norms around time are somewhat more strict, particularly in the urban, corporate environment. But even here the culture tends toward a warmth and flexibility that distinguish it from more rigidly time-disciplined settings. Gender roles in Romania reflect the complex interplay of traditional and modern patterns that characterizes much of contemporary European society. Traditional expectations: the woman as the heart of the home and the primary caregiver, the man as provider and public actor, remain present and influential, particularly in older generations and in rural settings. At the same time, Romanian women have been active in public life and professional roles for many decades, and contemporary Romanian society increasingly supports more equal distribution of domestic and professional responsibilities. The social life of the Romanian village, which remains an important cultural touchstone even for the majority of Romanians who now live in cities, has its own particular rhythms and conventions. The evening gathering at the gate, the Sunday visit to church and the socializing afterwards, the community events of the agricultural calendar. These patterns of social life create a dense web of connection and mutual knowledge that is, in many ways, the ideal form of Romanian social community. The return to the village for summer holidays, for Christmas, for family events, is important to many urban Romanians as a way of maintaining these connections and renewing the relationship with the place of origin. The café culture of Romanian towns and cities is another important social institution, the place where friends meet, where business is discussed over coffee, where the conversation of the community takes place in public. The terasa, the outdoor café terrace, is a particularly beloved institution in the warm months, when the social life of Romanian towns spills out of the indoors and onto the streets and squares, filling them with voices and laughter and the smell of coffee and the sound of music. In the quiet of everyday interaction, what is most consistently striking about Romanian social life is its warmth, the genuine pleasure in human company, the ease and expressiveness of communication, the willingness to engage with the whole person rather than just the social role. This warmth is not superficial. It is a deeply rooted quality that reflects the values of a culture that has always placed human relationship at the center of what matters. The concept of the hram, the community feast of the patron saint of the local church, which traditionally involved the entire village in a day of celebration, hospitality, and community gathering, is an expression of the social ideal of Romanian culture. The community as a body that gathers around a shared point of meaning, that shares food and music and prayer and dance, that renews its sense of itself as a community in the act of celebrating together. Though this form of celebration has become less universal in its reach than it once was, it persists in many communities as an expression of the social values that Romanian culture holds dear. Over generations, these social norms have served the Romanian people well, providing the framework of warmth and mutual obligation that holds families and communities together across the challenges of daily life and history. They are not merely conventions, they are the expressions of a social philosophy that has been tested in difficult circumstances and found to work, to sustain human life, to make it livable and even beautiful. As we move gently forward, we carry with us the warmth of Romanian social life, the welcome at the door, the table set with care, the conversation that goes long because it is real. These are not small things. They are, in many ways, the very substance of what a culture is for. Imagine a Romanian folk costume laid out on a table: the white linen shirt, the hand-embroidered blouse, the colored apron or skirt, the woven belt, the decorative headpiece. Each element has been made by hand, and the making has taken not hours but days or weeks or months. The embroidery on the cuffs and collar of the blouse, red and black geometric patterns, or the floral motifs of one particular region, or the dense, intricate patterns of another, represents hours of careful work, of threading and knotting and building the design stitch by stitch. It is not merely decoration, it is the expression of a visual language, specific to a region and a community, carrying meanings that are partly understood and partly felt. The traditional Romanian blouse, with its characteristic embroidered decoration at the shoulders and cuffs, is perhaps the most internationally recognized element of Romanian traditional dress, and in recent years it has undergone a remarkable cultural revival. The hashtag La Blouse Roumaine, named after the painting by Henri Matisse, who was so struck by the beauty of the Romanian blouse that he painted it more than 30 times, has become associated with a movement to celebrate and wear this traditional garment not as a costume but as a living article of clothing. On the 1st of June, designated as the Day of the Romanian Blouse, thousands of Romanians around the world wear their with pride, a gesture that is both personal and political, both aesthetic and cultural. The traditional dress of Romania varies significantly from region to region, reflecting the different histories, environments, and ethnic communities of different parts of the country. The dress of Maramures, with its bold black and white or colored embroidery, its sheepskin coats, its distinctive hats, is quite different from the dress of Oltenia or Muntenia, which tends toward more colorful and floral embroidery, or from the dress of the Saxon communities of Transylvania, which reflects the Central European heritage of those communities. This regional variety is one of the great riches of Romanian folk culture, a visible map of the different communities and traditions that have contributed to the whole. The fabrics of Romanian traditional dress reflect the agricultural and pastoral economy of their origin. Linen, grown and processed locally, was the primary fabric for shirts and blouses, its texture slightly rough when new and softer and more beautiful with age and washing. Wool, from the sheep that were central to the Romanian pastoral economy, was used for the heavier garments. The kojok, the decorated sheepskin coat, the woolen skirts and pants, the heavy woven belts. The production of these fabrics, the growing of the flax, the combing and spinning and weaving of the wool, was traditionally women's work, and the skill with which it was done was a measure of a woman's value in the community. The kojok, the decorated sheepskin coat that is one of the most visually striking elements of Romanian traditional dress, is a masterpiece of applied art. The sheepskin is turned with the fleece inward, for warmth, and the leather outer surface is decorated with elaborate embroidery in colored wool and with applique patterns that vary by region. In some areas the decoration is relatively restrained. In others it is dense and extravagant, covering the entire surface of the coat in patterns of extraordinary richness. The making of a traditional kojok requires months of skilled work, and the finished garment is both a functional object and a work of art. The colors of Romanian traditional embroidery carry meaning that is partly regional and partly universal. Red is the dominant color in most regional traditions, associated with life, with love, with celebration, with protection against evil. Black is used in many regions as a contrasting color and is associated with solemnity and formal occasion. Blue, yellow, and green appear in various regional vocabularies with their own specific associations. White, the color of the linen ground, is associated with purity and with the liminal moments of human life, birth, marriage, death. In contemporary Romania, the relationship between traditional and modern dress is, as in most of the world, primarily one of context and occasion. The everyday dress of most Romanians, urban and rural, is essentially the same global contemporary fashion worn everywhere. But the traditional garments are preserved with care and worn with genuine pride on the occasions that call for them: the national holidays, the folk festivals, the village celebrations, the weddings where the bride and her attendants may choose to wear traditional dress as a statement of cultural identity and connection to the heritage. There is, in contemporary Romania, a lively movement of young designers and craftspeople who are working with the traditional visual language of Romanian embroidery and textile arts in ways that bring these traditions into dialogue with contemporary fashion and design. Traditional motifs appear on contemporary garments, on accessories, on home furnishings, interpreted and adapted in ways that maintain their connection to the original while making them accessible and appealing to a contemporary sensibility. This dialogue between tradition and modernity is one of the most creative aspects of contemporary Romanian culture. The craft of the traditional Romanian wooden gate, particularly in Maramures, where the gates of village houses are among the most elaborate and beautiful examples of wood carving in the world, is another expression of the decorative impulse that runs through Romanian traditional culture. These gates, which may take a craftsman months to complete, are decorated with geometric patterns and symbolic motifs. The rope of life, the solar wheel, the tree of life, carved in deep relief into the wood. They are simultaneously functional objects, works of art, and statements of the family's identity and values. The jewelry of Romanian folk tradition, the heavy silver necklaces and earrings of the Oltenia region, the glass bead necklaces of other areas, the intricate silver work of Transylvania, reflects both the aesthetic sensibility and the material culture of different communities. These pieces were not merely decorative, they were stores of value, indicators of family wealth and status, objects that were passed down through generations as expressions of continuity and family pride. Many Romanian families still possess pieces of traditional jewelry, worn only on special occasions but treasured as connections to the ancestral past. The art of the traditional egg decoration, the decorated Easter eggs of Romania, known as oua in candlelit, is one of the most distinctive and beautiful of Romanian traditional craft forms. Using a wax-resist technique, the decorator applies patterns in melted wax before dipping the egg in successive baths of dye, building up layers of color and pattern in designs of extraordinary intricacy. The patterns used, geometric and symbolic, specific to regional traditions, have been passed down through generations, their meanings partly understood and partly felt, their beauty unmistakable. Over generations, the textile and decorative arts of Romania have served as a visual language through which communities have expressed their identity, their values, and their aesthetic vision. They have also served as a form of social communication, a way of reading, in the dress of a person you meet, where they come from, what their social position is, what occasions they are marking. This visual language, still legible to those with the knowledge to read it, connects the contemporary wearer of traditional dress to the long line of people who have worn it before them. As we move gently forward, we carry with us the images of these beautiful things: the embroidered blouse with its red and black patterns at the shoulder, the painted Easter egg held carefully in cupped hands, the carved wooden gate of the Maramure's farmhouse standing against the hill and the sky. These are not relics of a dead past. They are the living expressions of a culture that knows the value of beauty made by hand, with care, and passed from one generation to the next. There is a moment in the performance of the doina, the great lyrical folk song form of Romanian music, when the voice seems to leave the body of the singer and enter the landscape itself. The phrase begins simply, moving in a narrow range, and then gradually opens, extending, ornamenting, reaching toward something that seems just beyond the edge of ordinary expression. It is a sound that is entirely human and yet seems to connect the human to something larger, to the space of the plain under the wide sky, to the ache of missing, to the particular kind of longing that the Romanians call dor. Romanian folk music is one of the great musical traditions of Europe, diverse, deep, and in many of its forms, of extraordinary sophistication. The music of the different regions varies significantly in character. The music of Transylvania, influenced by the presence of Hungarian and Saxon communities, has a different melodic vocabulary and rhythmic character from the music of Moldavia or Oltenia or the Dobroja. But across all these regional varieties, there are shared qualities: the primacy of the voice and the violin, the elaborately ornamented melodic lines, the complex rhythms of certain dance forms, the emotional directness that is one of Romanian music's most immediately striking characteristics. The taraf, the traditional Romanian instrumental ensemble, typically composed of violins, a bass or cello, and sometimes a cymbalum, the hammered dulcimer, has been the primary vehicle of Romanian folk music for centuries. The musicians of the taraf play with a freedom and virtuosity that reflects a long tradition of oral transmission and improvisation. Each performance is a living event, not a reproduction of a fixed text, and the best taraf musicians are known for the individuality and creativity of their playing, the richness of their ornamentation, the responsiveness to the mood of the audience and the occasion. Romanian classical music has its own distinctive voice within the European tradition. George Enescu, perhaps the greatest Romanian musician of the 20th century, and one of the most remarkable figures in the history of European classical music, created a body of work that synthesizes the Romanian folk tradition with the techniques and forms of the Western classical tradition in ways of extraordinary originality. His Romanian Rhapsodies, the most popular of his works in the concert hall, bring the energy and color of Romanian folk music into the orchestral setting with electrifying effect. But his deeper works, the opera Oedipe, the symphonies, the late string quartets, reveal a creative mind of the highest order, working at the frontier of expression. The literary tradition of Romania is one of the richest in Eastern Europe, though it has been slow to reach the wider international audience it deserves. Mihai Eminescu, the great poet of the Romanian Romantic movement, created a body of lyrical poetry that is, in the depth of its philosophical inquiry and the beauty of its language, the equal of the finest poetry of the European 19th century. His long philosophical poem Luciferul, The Evening Star, is considered by many Romanians to be the supreme achievement of Romanian literature, a meditation on the nature of genius, of love, and of the human condition expressed in verse of unforgettable beauty. The 20th century produced a remarkable flowering of Romanian literature that engaged with the challenges and tragedies of the century with both moral courage and artistic brilliance. The novels of Liviu Rebreanu, particularly Ion and Forest of the Hanged, offer profound portraits of Romanian rural and wartime life. The poetry of Tudor Arghezi brought a new vernacular energy and moral seriousness to Romanian verse. The philosophy and fiction of Emil Cioran, Mircea Eliade, and Eugene Ionesco, all of whom spent significant parts of their lives in France and wrote in both languages, gave Romanian intellectual culture a presence on the international stage. Romanian cinema has produced, particularly since the 1990s and with increasing international recognition in the 2000s, films of outstanding quality. The Romanian New Wave, a loose grouping of filmmakers including Cristi Poir, Cristian Mungiu, Corneliu Porumboy, and Radu Muntean, has received international acclaim for films that engage with the complexities of contemporary Romanian society with a formal rigor, a moral seriousness, and a deep humanity that have earned them comparison with the great cinematic movements of other national traditions. The Palme d'Or awarded to Cristian Mungiu's 4 months, 3 weeks and 2 days at Cannes in 2007 announced to the world that Romanian cinema had found its distinctive voice. The visual arts in Romania draw from both folk traditions and the European academic tradition. The icon painting tradition, continuous from the Byzantine period through to the present, represents one of the most distinctive contributions of Romanian visual culture, combining theological precision with aesthetic beauty in objects that function simultaneously as sacred images and as works of art. The painted glass icons of the Nicula tradition, with their bright colors and their folk sensibility, are particularly beloved. Popular sacred art of the highest quality, made accessible and alive by the directness of their visual language. The theatrical and dramatic traditions of Romania include a rich popular theatre tradition, the folk performances of the winter season, the puppet theatre, the folk drama of the weddings and festivals, alongside a sophisticated urban theatre culture that has produced directors, actors, and playwrights of international standing. The work of theatre directors like Andrei Serban and Radu Pențiulescu has been recognized internationally as among the most important in the contemporary European theatre. The tradition of oral storytelling in Romania, the basm, the folk tale with its characteristic narrative structure and its cast of recurring characters, is both a literary tradition in its own right and a foundation for the wider literary culture. The stories collected and published by the great 19th-century folklorist Petre Isparescu, featuring the hero Fat Frumos, the wise woman Ileana Kazanziana, the trickster and the giant and the helpful animals of the fairy tale world, are as central to Romanian cultural memory as the fairy tales of the Brothers Grimm are to the German-speaking world. Architecture in Romania is a story of extraordinary variety, from the wooden churches of Maramureș, whose soaring spires represent a structural ambition remarkable for wooden construction, to the Ottoman-influenced architecture of the southern cities, to the elaborate neo-Baroque and neo-classical buildings of Bucharest at its early 20th century height, to the massive and somewhat austere monuments of the socialist period, to the contemporary buildings that are transforming the urban landscape with new forms and materials. Each layer of this architectural history is visible in the Romanian city, a palimpsest of different eras, different philosophies, different relationships between architecture and power and community. The folk arts of Romania, the weaving and embroidery we have already noted, the pottery, the wood carving, the painted eggs, are themselves an artistic tradition of the highest order. They are arts that have been developed over centuries within communities, passed from master to apprentice across generations, refined by the accumulated intelligence of thousands of practitioners working within shared traditions. Their beauty is not accidental. It is the result of long effort and deep knowledge. If we listen closely to the art of Romania, in all its forms, we begin to hear a consistent preoccupation, the effort to express, in forms of beauty, the full range of human experience in this particular corner of the world, with its particular landscape and its particular history. This effort has produced, across the centuries, a body of creative work that is worthy of the deepest attention, and that, in its best achievements, speaks not only to Romanians but to anyone with ears to hear and eyes to see. Every society builds, over time, systems for organizing collective life, for making decisions, educating the young, caring for those who need care, and distributing resources across the community. In Romania, these systems have been shaped by a particularly complex history, the institutional legacy of different periods of governance, the transformations of the communist period, the democratic reconstruction of the post-1989 years, and the progressive integration into the European Union and its regulatory framework. The result is a social order that reflects all of these influences, combining old and new, formal and informal, in ways that are specific to the Romanian experience. Romania's legal and political system is a parliamentary republic, with a bicameral legislature, a directly elected president with significant executive powers, and an independent judiciary. The country's constitution was adopted in 1991, revised in 2003, and enshrines the fundamental rights and freedoms of citizens in accordance with European human rights standards. Romania became a member of NATO in 2004 and of the European Union in 2007, and these memberships have been important anchors for the country's legal and institutional development, creating external frameworks and standards that have shaped the direction of legal and administrative reform. The education system of Romania has deep roots. The first universities in the Romanian principalities were established in the 17th and 18th centuries, and the development of a national education system in the 19th century was considered a foundational project of the nation-building effort. Under communism, the education system was expanded and literacy was brought to populations that had previously had limited access to schooling, a genuine achievement of the period, whatever its other costs. The post-communist education system has been subject to significant reform, with efforts to align it with European standards while maintaining the traditional strengths of Romanian education in mathematics, science, and the humanities. Romania has produced graduates in mathematics, computing, and the sciences who have achieved international distinction, and the tradition of intellectual rigor in Romanian education. The demanding curriculum, the high standards expected of students, the respect for knowledge, continues to produce people of real ability. The Romanian diaspora, the millions of Romanians living and working in Western Europe, North America, and elsewhere, includes very large numbers of highly educated professionals. Doctors, engineers, scientists, academics, artists, people who carry the intellectual heritage of Romanian education into the wider world. The healthcare system in Romania reflects the complexity of the country's history. A universal public health system was established under communism and has been maintained, with significant challenges and reforms, through the transition and beyond. Access to healthcare is, in principle, universal, though the quality and availability of services varies significantly between urban and rural areas, and the emigration of many Romanian medical professionals to better-paying positions in Western Europe has created real pressures on the public system. Private healthcare has grown significantly in the post-communist period, particularly in the cities, adding a complementary layer of services. The informal economy of mutual aid and family support, the network of relationships through which Romanians have always supplemented and sometimes substituted for formal institutional support, remains an important part of the social fabric. The extended family network provides practical support in childcare, in elder care, in the management of illness and difficulty, in ways that formal social systems do not always reach or adequately address. This informal network reflects the deep values of family loyalty and community solidarity that we have explored throughout this documentary, values that have proven remarkably resilient across the enormous social changes of the past century. The economic development of Romania since the democratic transition has been remarkable in its overall trajectory. The country has moved from a relatively isolated, centrally planned economy to a more dynamic market economy with significant growth in manufacturing, services, and technology sectors. The accession to the European Union accelerated this transformation, opening Romanian businesses and workers to the wider European market and attracting significant foreign investment. Agriculture remains an important part of the Romanian economy and of Romanian cultural identity, though its relative economic weight has declined significantly as urbanization and industrial development have grown. Romania has some of the most fertile agricultural land in Europe, and the potential of Romanian agriculture, particularly in the organic and premium segments of the market, is increasingly recognized. The village and the farm, the garden and the orchard, retain their hold on the Romanian imagination even as fewer Romanians work directly in agriculture, serving as symbols of rootedness, of seasonal rhythm, of the connection to the land that is one of the deepest currents of Romanian cultural identity. The NGO and civil society sector in Romania has grown significantly since 1990, filling roles that neither the state nor the market adequately addresses: in cultural preservation, in community development, in environmental protection, in the support of vulnerable populations. The energy and creativity of Romanian civil society, of the young activists and social entrepreneurs and cultural innovators who are working to build the kind of country they want to live in, is one of the most encouraging aspects of contemporary Romania. The relationship between Romania and its diaspora, the millions of Romanians living abroad, is a complex and important dimension of contemporary Romanian social and economic life. Remittances from the diaspora have been a significant economic contribution. The cultural influence of Romanians who have lived abroad and returned, or who maintain connections from abroad, has been an important factor in the country's opening to the wider world. The political voice of the diaspora, increasingly organized, increasingly significant in elections, has become a notable feature of Romanian democratic life. Environmental policy and the protection of Romania's extraordinary natural heritage, the old-growth forests, the Danube Delta, the biodiversity of the Carpathians, have become increasingly important areas of public concern. Romania is home to some of Europe's largest remaining wilderness areas, and the tension between the economic development of these areas and their conservation is a live and important debate. The voices of scientists, environmental organizations, local communities, and international conservation bodies are all part of a conversation about how Romania manages the relationship between development and preservation. Over generations, Romanian social systems have demonstrated a particular quality: the capacity to maintain, beneath the surface of formal institutional structures, the informal networks and values that sustain human life when the formal systems are inadequate or absent. This is not a solution to the challenges of institutional development, but it is a resource, a testament to the social intelligence and the human warmth of a culture that has learned, across long experience, to take care of itself and its members. As we move gently toward the close of our journey, we carry with us a sense of Romania as a country in motion, building its future with the materials of its past, navigating the tensions between its particular traditions and the wider European context in which it finds itself, discovering its voice in the conversation of contemporary civilization. It is a country with deep resources of culture and intelligence, of warmth and creativity, of resilience and beauty. As night settles over the Transylvanian hills, the lights of the villages appear one by one in the valley below, each one a warm point of amber in the deepening dark. The forest on the slopes above the village is black against the fading sky, a dense, patient darkness that has been here longer than any of the lights below it, longer than the village itself, longer than the roads and the fields. The stars begin to show. From somewhere down in the village, the sound of music rises faintly, fiddle and bass, the laughter of a celebration. And in the church tower, the bell rings the hour with a clarity that carries across the valley and into the hills and is answered by silence. This is what Romania leaves in the heart of those who encounter it with open attention: a sense of depth, of layers of time and meaning laid one upon another, of a civilization that has been building and creating and enduring in this landscape for a very long time. The depth is not only historical. It is also sensory: the depth of the forest, the depth of the flavors at the Romanian table, the depth of the emotions in the doina, the depth of the blue in the Voronezh fresco. Romania is a country that rewards attention, that reveals itself slowly and with great richness to those willing to move through it without hurry. In the quiet rhythm of everyday life, Romanians move between the demands of the contemporary world and the resources of a very old culture with a particular kind of ease. The grandmother who tends her garden and makes her own jam and knows the names of all the plants in the meadow, and the granddaughter who studies computer science in the city and speaks 3 languages. These are not 2 different worlds but 2 expressions of the same culture, differently inflected by time and circumstance but drawing from the same deep wells. The door, that untranslatable Romanian longing, is perhaps the key that opens the soul of this culture most fully. Door is the feeling of Romania itself, the sweet ache of the beautiful thing at a distance, the awareness of the preciousness of what is known and loved and perhaps temporarily absent. It is the emotion of the emigrant who left and still dreams of the smell of lime trees in bloom in the summer evening. It is the emotion of the villager who has moved to the city and still returns, whenever possible, to the specific landscape of their childhood. It is also the emotion of the person fully present in Romania, aware of the beauty, aware of the difficulty, aware of the deep richness of what they are part of. If we listen closely to the soul of Romania, we begin to hear what connects all the things we have encountered in this long journey. The landscape and the culture, the language and the food, the music and the ceremonies, the social warmth and the intellectual life. What connects them is, at its core, a particular orientation toward the world, an orientation of attentiveness and warmth, of deep attachment to place and people, of care for beauty in the making of things, of resilience in the face of difficulty and generosity in the face of good fortune. The painted monasteries of Bucovina stand in their wooded valleys as they have stood for 500 years, their frescoes facing the weather, the blue of Voronezh unchanged after all that time. Each morning, the nuns or monks in these communities rise before dawn for the first service of the day. The prayers that have been said in this place, in some form, since the walls were painted. The continuity is palpable, like a thread running from the 15th century to this morning, connecting people across the gulf of time in the shared act of tending what is beautiful and sacred. Over generations, the Romanian people have faced their challenges, and they have been many, with the same qualities that we have been tracing throughout this documentary: warmth, resilience, creativity, and a deep conviction that the life of the community is worth investing in, that beauty is worth making, that the family and the village and the tradition are worth maintaining with care. These are not sentimental notions, they are practical orientations that have proven their value in the most difficult circumstances. As we gently move toward the end of our journey together, let the images of Romania settle slowly into stillness. The forest at dawn, the light filtering through the beech canopy. The Sunday family gathered around the table, the smell of siorba and kozinac filling the warm kitchen. The hora turning in the summer evening, the fiddle and the laughter. The old woman at her embroidery frame, the needle moving through the white linen with patient precision. The child learning to dance, watching the feet of the adults with serious concentration. The candlelit church at Easter midnight, the flame passing from hand to hand, the words rising in the dark, Christos inviat. These images are not from a distant past, they are from the living present of a people who know the value of what they carry. Romania is not a country that has resolved all its tensions or completed its journey of becoming. It is a country in motion, as all countries are, finding its way through the particular challenges and opportunities of its particular moment in history. But it carries with it, into this motion, resources of culture and beauty and human warmth that are genuinely extraordinary. The spirit of Romania continues to breathe quietly through its people, its stories, and its timeless traditions, through the doina and the decorated egg, through the embroidered blouse worn with pride on a summer festival day, through the monastery in its valley and the painted church in its village, through the grandmother's garden and the student's ambition and the musician's ornament and the poet's longing. It breathes through the smell of the forest after rain and the taste of the wine from the rolling hills and the sound of the fiddle at a wedding and the warmth of the welcome at a stranger's door. Now, let the sounds of Romania grow gentle and distant. Let the fiddle fade into the evening air. Let the forest settle into its deep quiet. Let the candle burn in the small shrine in the corner of the room, and let the icons watch over the sleeping house with their steady, golden gaze. Let the grandmother's hands rest from their work and the child's eyes close in sleep, and the fields lie still under the wide Carpathian stars. Rest now. The journey has been long and slow and beautiful, as all the best journeys are. The forest will be here when you return. The painted churches will be here. The table will be set, and the door will be open. Romania waits, deep and warm and alive, beneath the turning sky. Thanks for watching. What culture would you like to learn about next? Comment below. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. See you on the next one.